This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Gotham City, like any other large metropolis, abounds in girls of all shapes and sizes. Debutantes, nurses, stenographers, and librarians.
Gotham City Library, Miss Gordon speaking.
Lopez hair removal. This is Jose.
Holy transformation. 1 minute, plain Barbara Gordon, librarian and Commissioner Gordon's daughter. And the next minute, something new has been added. Batgirl, modeled after her idol, Batman.
Holy apparition! No, Boy Wonder, I'm Batgirl. You are no longer alone, Capes Crusaders.
It took me 3 years to track down the Jade Gato, and 3 more to figure out how to steal it.
Funny, it only took me 10 minutes to figure out how to snatch it back. No matter how you do it, crime doesn't pay girls.
Bumpa da bumpa.
Oh my God, it is bumpa to bumpa. Oh my God. Oh my. Bumpa. Oh my God. It is bumpa to bumpa. Bumpa, bumpa, bumpa. Bumpa. Bumpa to bumpa. Oh my God. It is bumpa to bumpa. Bumpa, bumpa, bumpa. Oh my God. Oh my. I can't believe it.
Salvete, mihi nomen est, Stella et hoc est, Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 227 for November MMXXII. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So, if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. Well, if you're listening to this particular episode rather than watching, then you will have heard the new hit single after years of being pretty quiet from Bubba Moose, featuring a new artist that's pretty hot on the scene, the Mayor. So I hope that you enjoyed that. Now, Professor Coca, my chief Tata correspondent, she is getting fed up with these long intros. And since she is a sponsor of mine and gives me oodles of cash each episode, I feel like I should honor her frustration, her annoyance. And she didn't really make a request, but I could kind of read between the lines. She doesn't want an intro this time. So I will just say as a non-intro that as I record, tomorrow is my birthday. Everyone on the social medias know because I like to do a countdown. It's like the one entitled thing that I do in my life, I feel. And Thanksgiving is also coming up. So happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate that. And if you don't, I just hope that you have a nice time gathered with friends, family, and maybe some good time off from work and everything. So there you go. No intro. Aha. Find your joy segment, Shag's mac and cheese of comfort and joy. I would say, now we're not going to talk about it because I'm not doing an intro. Work has not been ideal. I could share some things with you. It seems like from, you leave one stable job and then you encounter years of instability and things that I feel like when I was younger, I would have put up with, but now I advocate for myself more. And I also recognize like this is not good. And also it seems like I've been having a tough time of it recently and for maybe a couple years now. And I think at one point it will look up for me and it'll be my time, but it is not yet my time. So finding joy is great. Of course, once I leave the school building, I just try not to, I tell other people about what happened, but don't really carry that with me. I have been enjoying playing, haven't gotten too far into it, but I've been staying away from social media so I don't get spoiled. God of War Ragnarok. God of War is one of my favorite series on PlayStation. I've been with it for a while. That was my first mature M-rated video game that I ever got. I had to like convince my mom in particular, like, it's all about the Greek and everything. And good thing she didn't walk in when Kratos was doing some of his sexy time way back when. But this new era of God of War is just so amazing, and seeing his time with his son, something that you wouldn't expect from the Kratos of old. So that's been great. And I just encountered a section that I was super surprised at, and very similar to The Last of Us Part 2. I was surprised that something happened. So I'm glad that wasn't spoiled, but still, I'm told that, or I've seen it's like 28 to 60 hours, depending on play style. And because I look around and try to find things, I feel like I'm going to be closer to 60 hours. So it's going to take me a while. So can't really look at or watch anything. So that's been a lot of fun. And then I'm going to talk about it for my anime watch list, but Romantic Killer was so amazing that brought me so much joy, and I destroyed that whole series, which it wasn't very much, in a weekend. So I'm sad that it's over with, but that was great. Okay. Let's talk about some quickies. So I am going to do 4 quickies of Nightwing 90 through 93. And I think your ears will prick up for 93 because, of course, you know what that means. So we're going to go through this pretty quickly. And the only one I want to share, I think, visually is, of course, 93. And I want to talk about this. Okay. So Nightwing 90. And of course, I shouldn't say of course, but Devin Grayson is the writer on this arc or storyline, and we're continuing with all that blockbuster stuff that's been going on. The cover date is April 2004. And Nightwing, if you remember, in 89, Blockbuster destroyed his apartment complex, and Nightwing is just, I forgot to find a synopsis for this one. So Nightwing is he's absolutely savage in number 90. He is going through all of Blockbuster's minions one by one. We really see Nightwing unleashed here, basically telling them give up the game, and also in a certain way looking for Blockbuster as well, but just going through them. We see many icicle word bubbles, which are my favorite. So I am happy about that. But I think besides seeing, what Nightwing would be like unleashed, I think this is the closest almost you see him, I would say, like as Batman, because he's like close to the line. He's doing some pretty big physical damage to the people that he's running up against. And we know that when people go up against Batman or do something that really gets Batman's goat, then Batman unleashes and wreaks havoc. And Nightwing is very much someone, I think, who he can get upset, but I feel like he is calmer and more level-headed, and he doesn't inflict as much bodily harm. So to see him like this was really startling. And I would almost say that he crosses the line, if we think comparatively about where his line would be compared to other people's line. But I also, again, kind of calling out Batgirl here, I could potentially have put Huntress in this issue, and it would be like, yeah, that's totally Huntress doing it, even though she, of course, goes lethal sometimes. But just some of the stuff that he's doing, I'm like, Huntress has done, similar things, shooting people with arrows, etc., leaving them, in the ICU. And, she gets told off for it. But Nightwing here, no one's coming and saying, you need to stop what you're doing. But you see very much, I think, the emotional toll that the previous issue, the apartment complex, Blockbuster continually going after him, the people he loves, the fact that emotionally he's very broken down on many levels, romantically as well as familiarly with the apartment building and Barbara. So it makes sense. And we just see what happens when he reaches his limit. Nightwing 91, subtitle Rekindle. May 2004 is the cover date. Blockbuster has thrown every assassin and cutthroat he could at Nightwing. Now he's bringing in his biggest gun, Shriek. The gloves are off for the big rematch between hero and villain. I found it very interesting that Nightwing, if Josh were on here, he would have said homeless cop, that Nightwing is homeless at one point and actually sleeping under newspapers. I mean, I shouldn't say at one point. Well, at one point he's sleeping under newspapers, but he is homeless. And so it's interesting that he could have found other places to go. He did stay with Barbara that one time, but remember, she said maybe it was a mistake. So he knows he can't go back there. Not seeking comfort or a place to stay from Batman is interesting. And Alfred calls him, I think right before, if I recall correctly, Alfred's talking with him and is like, do you have some place to go? And he's like, I'll figure it out. I think it again is just speaking to where he is psychologically, and that he's not in the mind space to be with anyone at this point in time. So is he looking for comfort, or is he just on this mission to take care of it? And is he going to find a place to rest his head and have people taking care of him? Or is he just going to get the bare minimum rest so they can take care of himself in order to take care of other people? And that's, again, very similar to Batman, I think, where Batman has learned the limits that his body can take and pushes himself to that point. He knows he needs to sleep at some point, so he'll put in his 5 hours, maybe at the very least, or maybe at the very most, and then get back to it. And I think, Nightwing, that's all he needs is like, well, here's a fire escape. Let me put some newspapers over me and then take a nap, and then I'm back to it. Amy is, I also said that this just feels like a completely different character, which, again, I think it makes sense. It's just really startling, but we see what happens, when trauma or something huge happens to a character. It totally makes sense. Amy, friend and now captain, of course, desperate to help him, but he's just beyond the Blue Haven PD right now, because she's like, maybe if I give him his job back, it'll be okay. It's not going to be okay. Then we have Nightwing 92 Flashpoint, June 2004 is the cover date. Nightwing versus Blockbuster. Blockbuster has thrown every resource at his disposal into war against Dick Grayson, and Nightwing has weathered the storm despite a slew of shocking casualties. But now the war boils down to two men face to face at last. And I should say again that Shriek fight, Shriek didn't really stand a chance, but we have battle damaged and shirtless Nightwing, which I love to see. I actually really love battle damaged action figures, battle damaged images and things of favorite characters. I think it shows like they've really been through it. I recently finished Crash Bandicoot 4, which is a really difficult game. And after beating it, there's like a battle damaged Crash Bandicoot. He's got like a black eye. One of his arms, I think, was in a cast, which was pretty fun. Tarantula, I think, is Donovan's favorite word, a hypocrite with what she's saying, blaming Nightwing for the deaths of the people in his apartment building, particularly John Law, because that's really all that she cares about, since she was doing stuff for Blockbuster. So, where she doesn't have a moral or ethical leg to stand on, and that's like ridiculous that she's like, how dare you did this? I'm like, you broke Babs and Dick up. You were doing things for Blockbuster against Dick. So really, whatever. Tarantula has a weird kink. I guess I shouldn't say weird, but she has a kink wanting to watch Nightwing get beat up. The reason why I didn't want to say weird is, people have kinks. So I guess we shouldn't judge them for it, even though I have my own opinions. So yeah, it's kind of weird. Just like, let me know next time. And on one hand, you could be like, well, maybe she's joking, but given Tarantula's character and the things we've seen, it seems realistic that she's like, no, she probably would certainly enjoy that. The reporter, Ms. Michaels, knows that Dick is Nightwing. She hasn't known the entire time. We find out she was actually hired by Blockbuster to figure things out, and then she kind of connected the things. So that was interesting. Nightwing and Tarantula, in particular, I would say Nightwing, because he tries to stop Tarantula from killing Blockbuster, goes through this whole thing to get Blockbuster's confession on tape. And that's why he's beat up, because there's no coercion or anything. And then they give it to somebody. And I think Tarantula's brother, if I'm remembering correctly. And then he destroys it. And after everything, there were no copies or anything. And there's just this powerful set of images really of Nightwing shaking with rage of again, Blockbuster is just not going to meet justice. And then Nightwing has his own signal, which Amy and her husband put up. And that was interesting, kind of trying to get him to come back again from where he is and come back to the BPD. And then we have Nightwing 93 Slow Burn. July 2004 is the cover date. Nightwing has lost his job, his love, his home, and several of his closest friends. Now it's just Nightwing versus Blockbuster, the deadliest of adversaries in their final face-off. Some questions before I get to what I wanted to talk about, I guess, which I won't talk about too long, but just a little bit. Ms. Michaels calls Nightwing son, which I thought was strange because they seem of comparable age. So I'm not necessarily sure about that. But she's dead now, DED dead. So I suppose it doesn't really matter. There is a discrepancy I noticed between issues of how to spell Rolly. Is it ROLY or ROLLY? Who knows? This scene that I've put up here is really interesting. I said, whoa. Nightwing allows, Tarantula wanted to kill Blockbuster originally in the previous issue, and he said, no, there's another way. That way didn't work out. And so now he is just fed up. And he realizes, it's never going to stop. It's never going to go away. And he walks away and allows Tarantula to kill Blockbuster. And I'm sure there may have been blood splatter, but I don't know how much actually got on his hands. But the fact that there's that image at the bottom there are a lot of great images, I think, in this whole arc, and in particular in this episode that I'm talking about, these issues. But just him looking down at his hands in sort of a Lady Macbeth sort of way of like, what have I done? I wondered, is this the same or worse as when he quote unquote killed Joker because he went too far there, and he was the agent of that killing, and here he allows it. His inaction allows that killing, and he's involved, though he isn't necessarily the agent. And I think figuratively there certainly is blood on his hand. Now, one could say that this is worse, if only because it seems like Blockbuster is really DED dead, and we know that Joker ended up not coming back. That was like a year ago, wasn't it, that I covered that, or a couple of years ago? I think both circumstances, Nightwing is like psychologically in a similar place. He seems maybe farther gone than the other one, just with everything that has happened. Yeah, job, love, home, friends. And he is just pushed to the breaking point. And he is Blockbuster, similar to Joker, is someone that, justice, he might be locked up, but it seems like he can always get out. So Joker can always escape, but Blockbuster just has so much connection within the system that I feel like he's always going to be free. So it's hard to compare them. You'd think that being the actor in the killing would make it worse. But this one, because we know that Blockbuster is actually dead and Nightwing turned away, almost seems maybe the worst of the two. And I don't know how he's going to necessarily come back from this, because we know the emotional toll that the Joker killing took on him. And so now we have this. I did ask, perhaps I've upset her, but I have not received any responses from Devin Grayson. But I did ask again about Nightfall. Is this Nightwing's Nightfall? It seems like it is. And the comparison between this and Joker's Last Laugh or Joker's Last Laugh. And I also asked her about the rape, which we know earlier on when I had tweeted to her, she did say that she regrets this scene and she's learned more from it. So he comes up and he's apologizing to Bruce, of course, because what he has done and the line that he has crossed, allowing Tarantula there. So, so Tarantula, it's interesting that Nightwing says, I failed you, which could be a connection. And, oh, well, she does say, talk to me. But I guess he failed Tarantula in that at the beginning when they were first introduced to each other, he was trying to take her under his wing. And so now he's just allowed her to kill. I mean, I guess he's failed Tarantula, he's failed himself, he's failed Batman, but he certainly was in a really, really bad position. And not many people are like Batman in that they're like strong enough to like see all this bad stuff happening and walk away. So I think there is a difference perhaps in maturity. And Nightwing, I think his heart is shaped differently than Batman's, that the emotional connection, I think, was just too hard to sever, whereas Batman can kind of disassociate and be like, all these bad things happen to people I love, but the mission. And so I think it's just harder for Nightwing to disassociate in that way. But anyways, it's getting increasingly uncomfortable. Certainly, he does say, don't touch me. I'm ... a poisonous, numb. I killed him. We killed him. And she says, no, I. So she straddles him, removes her hair clip. I guess so it's sexier. I don't even know. And as you can see, straddles him here with that. And yeah, that's good. That's right. We're free now. He can't hurt us anymore. So that's interesting. It's never going to stop. Never. So he's repeating what he had said before. So first of all, art-wise, the red border is similar to the red border we had back here. The red border around the rape scene is very similar to the red border we have around Blockbuster getting killed. So that is already a bad association. The fact that murder is associated with this sexual act. Okay. So if you had a question about whether this is rape or not, I think that border sort of clears it up. That he does say, don't touch me. Don't touch me. I'm poisonous, numb, ... It's, okay. Word wise, I don't want to get myself into trouble here. It's interesting what he says. The don't, I think, in general would be like, okay, but then don't touch me. I'm poisonous, numb. And I'm thinking about other where like, I'm bad. You can only hurt me. And then there's like a kiss scene. And then I don't know that we necessarily like the other person, you're not. But the fact that he is traumatized, he is physically worn out, mentally worn out, emotionally worn out. And this woman is forcing him to have sex. I think it's pretty clear that it is assault and rape. And I mean, he doesn't have any sort of strength to speak of to prevent this from happening. Now, the question is why, and I don't know, like I think someone should write in and tell me, remind me. I was going to look this up, but I forgot. Why was this so controversial at the time? And I will say, because I like to own up to things, that I used to make fun of this. I don't think I may have read it and looked at it, but I remember like years ago, I was a baby comics reader. I used to joke, of Nightwing getting raped by Tarantula and really had no idea what the circumstances or the context who Tarantula was. I think I used to say it to Nightwing fans in my circle. I don't know why I thought that would be funny. I think it was like a trolling, but it was just wildly inappropriate. And I very much regret doing it, but it happened. And so now I'm owning up to it. So I knew it was coming and I was interested to see how this would play. I don't find this controversial, with the exception, of course, of rape being bad and controversial, but just like, why would people be really, really upset that this is happening. And I think that it makes sense given Tarantula's character. This is not out of left field for what Tarantula has been doing. If this was just like randomly, let's take Tarantula and have her do this bad thing to a beloved character, then I'd be like, yeah, there was no lead into that. But no, she's been doing stuff similar to this, not to this degree, the entire time, every time that we see her. So it makes sense character wise for her. And we see female characters get raped all the time. And depending on who the character is, I would say more often than not, there's not a public outcry. Like the only public outcry I really remember is Sue Dabney in Dr. Light. That's the only thing I can remember of, like, everyone else just kind of like reads past it and they're like, well, that may, sure. I mean, women get raped all the time. But when a man gets raped, then people are like, how dare you do that to this character? And perhaps because I've read the entire run of Invincible, and Invincible gets raped, and that was really powerful and uncomfortable scene. And then that trauma stays with him, and he can't really intimately be with Eve for a very long time and has trouble seeing that other person. I thought that was done really well. And so why not have that, happen to a male character? I think people are just really uncomfortable with male characters getting raped, and men do get raped in real life. So I feel like if you're going to do it constantly to women, then maybe you should show that there is a flip side to it, and that your masculinity is not going to save you from an attacker or an aggressor. Now, I will say that if this is it and this is all we see, then there is a problem, because 94 on should be dealing with this trauma. Yeah, no, I would say that it's powerful and that it makes me feel very uncomfortable and makes Tarantula seem even worse than I ever thought that she was leading up to this, that she would look at how Dick is right now and think this is the perfect time to have sex with him and take advantage of him. And she, I think for her part, does not think that she's raping him. I think that she is very much hypersexual, and violence and this situation in general just gets her horned up and she's ready to go. And, they killed Blockbuster. They're free of him. She's super excited. In another context, we would have, I think of The Americans. I think it was the pilot episode where that the husband and wife were not, I can't remember their name. The husband and wife were not really, I mean, they were married, but they didn't really love each other. And it was because there's this sort of specter in the wife of this guy who would sexual assault her and was like the handler, and they ended up killing him. And after that, she initiates sex with her husband, and for like the first time it seems like they're actually being intimate with each other. And because of this like killing, you're like, yes, you're free of this thing that's been over you. So that would make sense. And so I think that's where Tarantula is, but Nightwing is just completely out of it. It's basically it feels like raping someone who has been roofied, I would say, or is just really drunk, because he doesn't necessarily, I mean, he's just saying the same thing over and over again. So it was just not good. His consent was not there. An unspoken consent, I think, was not there. Okay. I think that's it for that. So I would love to actually hear from you all what your experience was of that particular issue when it came out, and then what you think of it now. And if you remember what the actual, why did people have a problem with it? Was it just because they were uncomfortable that this happened to their favorite character? They should feel uncomfortable. And just because it's their favorite character and a man doesn't mean that that character is safe from being raped. So again, I think that's psychologically fascinating that no one's freaking out over women getting raped unless it's Sue Dabney. So there you go. I recommend reading The Power by Naomi Alderman, because there are, I don't want to say several, there's one that I probably won't ever forget, but there are rape scenes in there women raping men. And it makes you, and really there's like sexual violence and violence against men. And it's really interesting psychologically how, as a reader, and this is true of people that I spoke to about that particular work as well, how uncomfortable we get when that is happening. And that the level of discomfort does not match that when we're reading it happening to women. And it's because we are now numb to women getting raped, that it's just like, it's commonplace. But when we see it the other side, you're like, oh my gosh, this makes me feel really uncomfortable. I really don't like this. That's crazy. We should be like that for anyone with any sort of sexual assault happening to them. So I think that speaks really negatively about media and what we are digesting from media. And again, I go back to this thought of this special that I want to do about rape in media and what is the level of appropriateness that we should use it and how and, when. So I think it should be sparse, obviously. And well, I don't want to spoil that panel whenever it happens, but it's something that I am very much interested in, to be sure. Okay, so we are moving on to Batgirl 49 and 50. This is the main event of this particular part. So Batgirl 49, Dead Among the Dead Men, April 2004, writer Dylan Horrocks, penciler Rick Leonardi, inker Jesse Delperdang, and colors Jason Wright. Elderly widow Mrs. Krupotnik attends the funeral of her husband, Samuel. The funeral home director, Mr. York, opens a casket, and Mrs. Mrs. K exclaims that her husband is gone, and Mr. York tells her that he has indeed gone to a better place, and they point out that the corpse is literally gone, and Mr. York says, quote unquote, not again. Alfred Pennyworth introduces Cassandra Cain to her new apartment now that Batman has fired her as Batgirl. Alfred explains that her every need will be taken care of and tries to comfort her. He tells her that Batman is not disappointed in her, and she has achieved much more in her short career than most superheroes do in a lifetime. Alfred leaves and Cassandra sheds a single tear, one of those very dramatic things. Later, she walks through the streets of Gotham and spots a Batman t-shirt that makes her upset. In the Gotham clock tower, Robin tells Oracle through the video screen that Soul, that drug, is back and worse than ever. He confides in Oracle that he wishes Batgirl was on the streets helping them. Cassandra arrives at the clock tower and Oracle is surprised to see her. Cassandra asks why and collapses crying in Oracle's lap. Oracle tells her that apparently it's a very comfortable lap. Oracle tells her that there's so much more to life than being Batgirl, and she's free to experience that now. Cassandra tells Oracle that Batman said she was, quote unquote, erratic and irresponsible. Oracle is frustrated by Batman's inability to express any emotion other than anger. She then explains that Batman fired Batgirl because he was feeling guilty about depriving her of a normal life. Oracle tells Cassandra that Batman just wants her to be happy, and Cassandra insists that she was happy. Oracle insists that Cassandra is not happy and offers to do anything she can to help. Cassandra asks for Oracle's old Batgirl costume, and Oracle refuses. Cassandra decides to steal it anyway. Steal it! Did you hear that, Donovan? And sews it to fit her better. Robin struggles with a riot of soul junkies that he cannot contain. Batman is not responding to communication, and Oracle cannot find backup to help him. Robin is knocked down for a second. When he gets up, every rioter has been knocked out. Batman arrives and recognizes this move as the falling leaf, a nerve pinch invented in the 16th century by Chinese monks. By the time the rioters wake up, the drug will have left their system. Batman tells Robin that he only knows two people who can use the falling leaf, David Kane and Cassandra. Batgirl learns about the corpse thefts and finds a truck full of stolen dead bodies. This leads her back to the Lost Girls in Gotham Cemetery, the female street gang who are distributing Soul. It is revealed that the scientist supplying the Lost Girls is Dr. Death. Dr. Death requires fresh human cadavers to make Soul because he uses a neural extract. Batgirl is hiding in the pile of bodies they use, and she jumps out to attack the Lost Girls. The metahuman Hope kicks her down and intends to kill her for the pile, but Batman arrives and knocks out Hope, looking very disappointed in Batgirl. She's about to get fired again. There is an editorial note that tells us this takes place before Birds of Prey 63, just FYI. And that synopsis was provided by DC Wikia. Okay, so first of all, we have this particular cover where Cass's outfit, or Cass herself, is in one of the costume cases in the Batcave. Behind her, we have one of the Robins, perhaps Jason Todd. It kind of seems like she's dead. They were going to see Cassandra actually die, but that is not the case here. I would say in here with this Alfred and Cassandra conversation that Alfred is spouting a bunch of lies to Cassandra. Due to Master Bruce's inability to speak openly and honestly about his feelings, you may well have been left with the impression that he was disappointed in your performance as Batgirl. Please believe me, however, when I say that nothing could be farther from the truth. No, he is disappointed in her. He basically said that. So, that's a lie. I don't know where this is coming from. He's both Barbara and Alfred, I feel like, are interpreting Batman's actions inaccurately in order to maybe make Cassandra feel better, or just because they feel like Batman is a better guy than he actually is. Okay. It also twisting the knife there. You have achieved more in your few short years as Batgirl than many costume heroes manage in a lifetime. Your short career. So it's over, but hey, you did a good job, which is very interesting. Also, Cassandra is a child. Okay. She is a child. Yes, a young adult, but she's a child. She should not be living alone. She doesn't have any hobbies. She can't read. So literally, what is she going to do? Just sit around? What? Look out the window like this? Shed her one tear down her eyeball? I don't know. She goes, of course, to visit Oracle, and we have this scene at the bottom right with Cass and crying in Babs's lap. And immediately, of course, I thought of Nightwing doing the same thing a couple issues ago after Haley Circus got burned down. That Babs sure does get a lot of people crying in her lap lately. I do feel like, though, that this is typical. And honestly, it just makes sense why she explodes when she finally releases some emotion, because people put everything on her and she has to absorb it all and not give way to her own emotions when other people are having their moment. I mean, think about Officer Down. Everyone is freaking out around her because of Jim being in the hospital. Batman can't handle his own emotions. And when she had every right, the most right perhaps of everyone, because she's literally related to Jim Gordon, her father, that she is like, this is what we're going to do. And so, when you have to bottle that up, then when there's like, at some point, it's just going to explode. And so I think that's why I don't know that we can necessarily blame her when she does have really angry moments, or perhaps how she reacted with Dick, because I think it just things pile on around her. It's interesting how Babs both condemns what Batgirl did and also tries to explain it to Cass, thereby almost agreeing with him. He said I was erratic and irresponsible. He said I was jeopardizing the mission. Babs says, damn it, that's so typical of Bruce. The man is incapable of expressing any emotion except anger. Stupid Bruce. Look, Cass, he didn't fire you because of anything you've done. He did it because he feels guilty. He's worried that being Batgirl is bad for you, that the constant exposure to violence and evil was preventing you from healing the emotional harm you suffered as a child. Please remember that, listener. Healing the emotional harm you suffered, preventing you from healing the emotional harm you suffered as a child. Remember that if I don't, in terms of 50, please. Okay. So yeah, it's interesting that she doesn't say he shouldn't have fired you, but just like, hey, you're fired. Let's deal with it now. I think in a way she does, unfortunately, agree with him. I don't think that Bruce... I was going to say, I don't think that Bruce wants Cass to be happy. I won't say that, but I don't think that was necessarily part of why he fired her. That's definitely a Barbara thing, that she wants Cass to be happy. I do have a question, of course, with when you're telling someone you're not happy and the other person says, I am happy, and then the other person is adamantly saying, no, you're not. How do you argue with someone who says that they're happy, and who really knows best? So Babs does say, we've all noticed a change in you the last few months. I don't know what it's about because you won't talk to me, but you have not been happy. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I had a conversation several years ago with someone who described me as not really showing joy. And I thought, what? Where's this coming from? What do you mean? And then that, sort of sent me into a spiral of like, what am I doing wrong kind of thing. So I just don't, if Cass is happy, does Cass know what happy means? But if she feels like she's happy, then how can someone else tell her that she's not? And we see this, I think, in many forms and versions of media where, I was about to say a drug addict. So let's go to extreme examples because that's going to happen in 50 as well. But just, if someone's doing recreational drugs and another person spots this and like, this is toxic behavior, you're not happy, you're hiding from something, like, no, this makes me happy. I mean, what are you going to do? Maybe, unfortunately, maybe it does. I don't know. I mean, yes, it is toxic and bad behavior and it's unhealthy and unsafe, but maybe that is the only time that they can experience. I don't know. Okay. I'm not condoning drug use, but I just don't know who is best, obviously. I do like this panel that is, I almost wish that there weren't a square around it, but just Cass's face of Barbara saying, I'll do anything to help you, which is interesting because you know what she is going to ask. Anything but that. And even though the synopsis did say about the costume, she doesn't outright ask for the costume. I think it's more like, let me be Batgirl again. I do have a comment just that Cass is speaking really, really well. So this is just an inconsistency. I guess with practice, obviously someone is going to speak better, but it just seems like from a change of writers, we have her struggling to speak to speaking pretty fluently. So not sure about that. I do also think that this is very disrespectful, and I don't know how she was able to do this so quickly. Very disrespectful that she steals Barbara's costume without her consent. How dare you? I also wonder when Cass learned how to sew, because sewing is not easy. As someone who nearly sewed through my finger on an architecture project in A school, because we had to use some fabric for one of my courses, it's not easy. And I was an adult who had a sort of normal upbringing. So I generally knew of sewing and had engaged with it in the past. But yeah, there's no way. Okay, moving on. This was it almost reminded me of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where some bad guys are taken care of and Robin doesn't know what just happened. But it's also interesting, I'll get back to this, that Cass did say Battrick would never know. And yet, foolishly, she uses a nerve pinch that only 2 people know. And Batman is not an idiot. So you did yourself dirty there, lady. So here's the outfit, which I assume is mostly gray. And even though it's nighttime, but it's gray and blue, I feel like, or they're just really trying to change it. But it's her classic outfit that she had worn a couple issues back. She sewed up the mask so that it's very similar to her older outfit, cut a hole, I feel like, in the back of the cowl for her ponytail. She has a ponytail, which is unusual. And yeah, I would say it's gray. It just looks like it. I think she changed up the bat as well. Oh, she sewed over that yellow so that it's more black, or the yellow is just an outline. Oh, when she goes back to this group of girls, I guess that I remember this Hope person wearing that, but I did say IDK what that chick is wearing because it is very interesting. She's got a cop hat, which I guess we should intuit as her probably killing some sort of cop, and then a sports bra or a crop top, and then it looks like a Catholic schoolgirl skirt and some combat boots. So very interesting to see those two duke it out and the different outfits that they have. I do suppose that it is appropriate that Dr. Death is the one in this particular story, since his appearance was tied to the beginning, I would say, of the Cass and Bruce breakdown with that whole storyline, and also traveling overseas and Black Wind and all of that. So here we have it almost, I guess, coming at the climax of this particular breakdown. And I think my final comment is just that it is pretty gross that pieces of dead human beings are going into a drug. So I think, we get those ads about smoking, negative ads, and just that there's lead and all this bad stuff. And you're like, yeah, you're ingesting, or you are pulling into your lungs some metals. And here you are, I guess, ingesting, since it was a pill, and having go through your system corpses. So does that make you a cannibal? I don't know. So yes, I think this was fine. I do, of course, just wonder about people and what they're saying. I think that's my biggest grievance, is that they're both condoning what Bruce had done, and also saying he should have gone about it another way, in a way almost agreeing with them. But they're also saying things that I don't think actually Bruce was doing. So I think they're saying it to make themselves feel better. I think they're speaking more for themselves than Bruce. So really, I think we just need to hear from Bruce. But of course, she's going to do what she needs to do. And yeah, of course, she steals a costume. So Barbara should probably fire her and keep doing it, because I guess she feels like that makes her happy. So maybe it really does, if she is going to these lengths to go back to being Batgirl. I'm going to give this 7.5 out of 10 stolen costumes. Now, remember what I said, healing from the trauma growing up, right? That might not have been the direct, but that is what we're talking about. Okay. So then we get to Batgirl number 50 here. Tough Love, April 2004 is the cover date. Writer Dylan Horrocks, penciler Rick Leonardi, inker Jesse Delberdane, colorist Jason Wright. Again, the synopsis comes from DC Wikia. Cassandra Cain remembers life with her father, David Cain. During one afternoon, she tried to hug him for support, and he viciously slapped her. They engaged in their regular combat, and she battled him to the ground. She kissed her father on the cheek, and he kicked her in the stomach. Love, am I right? In the present, Batman is confronting Batgirl in Gotham Cemetery. Batman repeats that he told Batgirl to stand down, and this is her last chance to do as she's told. Batgirl refuses, and Batman says that he doesn't want to hurt her. Batgirl observes his body language, smiles, and tells him he is lying. They battle while Dr. Death and the Lost Girls look on. Dr. Death has Sunny Love bring him a red flask with concentrated soul, and he throws it at Batman and Batgirl. The flask breaks on a gravestone, infecting both of them. Batman tells Batgirl to stop this now before he's forced to hurt her. Batgirl puts her mask on and says, "Hurt me." Dr. Death remarks to Sunny that this is perfect and they will have escaped long before Batman and Batgirl are finished. Robin arrives and punches Dr. Death in his stupid face. Batgirl and Batman take their brawl outside the cemetery as the drugs kick in. They land on top of a train and mercilessly fight to the death. Robin follows in the Redbird, with Oracle helping him track their progress. Nightwing is dealing with a riot of soul junkies when Batgirl and Batman swing through. They ignore him, and Nightwing easily recognizes that they are both on Soul. Oracle sends Robin to get the antidote from Dr. Death. Nightwing tries to stop Batgirl and Batman, but they toss him aside like garbage. This is very interesting commentary going on in the synopsis here. Robin interrogates Dr. Death. He asks why Dr. Death turned to narcotics after a career in weapons of mass destruction. Dr. Death replies that a drug turning thousands of innocent partygoers into homicidal maniacs is a weapon of mass destruction. Robin demands the antidote, and Dr. Death insists that he didn't make one. Robin drops a vial of soul in the police van, infecting them both. Dr. Death admits that the antidote is in his coat pocket. He is horrified when Robin leaves without administering it to him. Two cops open the van doors and tell him that Robin did not spill soul. He spilled tomato juice. Robin rushes the antidote to Batgirl and Batman, with Nightwing following in the wing cycle. Batgirl and Batman fight across the tops of cars on a bridge. Their actions cause a large gasoline truck to flip over, spilling gas everywhere. Are you listening to me as I'm talking about this here? Robin and Nightwing quickly evacuate the bridge. Batman tosses an incendiary pellet and there's a massive explosion. Again, are you listening to me here while I'm saying this? Batgirl and Batman both dive into the water below, where they meet again. Instead of hurting Batgirl, Batman pulls her to safety. Batgirl feels the fatherly love in his embrace, and they sit together nicely on the shore. Batgirl tells Batman that her father never let her touch him or hold him. There was only fighting and hurting. Batman hurt her too when he sent her away. Batman explains that he needs to know who she is loyal to, her father, Oracle, or himself. Batgirl tells Batman that she's not loyal to him. She's loyal to the symbol on his chest. They are sitting next to a tunnel, and bats fly out of it into the rising dawn. Nightwing and Robin arrive with the antidote. Batman tells them to take it to the Batcave for analysis, as he does not need it. Then he tells them that they should go, as they all have work to do. Later, Oracle asks him if he was faking the influence of drugs. Batman has a gas mask in his utility belt, and he should have known that Dr. Death would try something like that. Batman tells her that the drug influence was real, although not as effective as Dr. Death claimed. Oracle asks why he would ever put himself and Batgirl through something like that. Here we go. Are you listening? Are you listening? Batman tells her that Batgirl needed it, and he did too. It was a therapy session for both of them, as Batgirl would not understand any other kind of therapy. He knew Batgirl needed to get things off her chest, and this was the only way to let her express those feelings. Oracle tells Batman that he is crazy. He responds, quote, so they say, but it works, end quote. Batgirl and Batman swing off together into the streets. Let me begin by saying I really did not like this issue. And after reading it, I can't understand why anyone would think that Batman is a good person, character, hero, father, anything. Now, I like to put on the guise of being overdramatic. I like to troll Donovan. And I want to assure you that this is not troll Stella. This is not over dramatic Stella or overly dramatic Stella for laughs, for kicks and giggles. I'm being authentic here. And I'll go through this. I also know that, of course, my opinion is not going to match up with other people's opinion. I will also be saying things that for cast fans to hear is going to be really upsetting and unsettling. And I do apologize for that, but I will explain where I'm getting what I am saying. So if you feel like you're going to be triggered, I guess, by me saying some upsetting things about Cassandra, then perhaps you should skip ahead maybe to the second part, because of course we just have listener emails after this. Okay. So the cover is safe to talk about, I think. Batgirl versus Batman. We have Dr. Death there in the background, almost in a negative image. Got some bats there as well. Batman's very large. She's almost Dark Knight Returns large. And she's kicking Batman. I don't know why he's not dead, because his neck is snapped back like that. But there we go. So, and again, this is 50, exercise issue. 50 is pretty big. You know, was it worth it? I don't know. So clearly, this opening here is supposed to make us understand why Batman does what he does in this issue, but it does not make it right or good. I want to put that, because we are associating then Batman to David Kane. And that's not a good association. Okay. We also, if we look at this imagery here of her somewhat on top of her father, kissing him. Okay, so we should recall this because we have that father-daughter association and everything. Like, yes, it's messed up. There's no sexual connotation here with this. She's just kind of looking for love. But also, I would say, looking at this image, and of course, she's a child in this, it looks like David Kane is on his belly. So also just remember that. And she's just jumping on top of him and kind of has a grimace and everything. Okay. So we're setting this up. So we should remember that this exists. And I do. So I will, of course, reflect back on that. Okay. And this is very interesting. It was almost the last image in the previous issue, but he look at this hulking mass of a man just standing in front of Cass. I think that also sets a really poor tone. Obviously, it's perspective. She's not that tiny, but it looks, like Gandalf and a hobbit here, but just how threatening that is. And it's just like, this is not going to be very good at all. So this whole scene at the cemetery, and in particular, I guess I will leave it right here, makes me really uncomfortable, because to me, there seems to be a sexual undertone to it with this one. that this fight is role play and it is going to devolve into sex at any moment. Now, remember, I spoke about just, people, emotions, heightened situations gets people going in various ways. I think the brain and chemistry and thing works interestingly. So looking at this bottom image here, if they started having sex, I'd be like, well, that's how it was leading. Okay. Again, I did warn you that I'm going to say some really startling things, but I'm going to explain it all. Now, the opening scene is there to connect us with the fact, to connect for us, I should say, the fact that it is a father-daughter situation. Okay. So David, Cass, okay, we've got Batman, Cass, same situation. Now, I want to take a step back really quickly and talk about connotation versus denotation. And this comes at a good time because I just finished my last module in my literacy course, and it was semantics and syntax, which I do love grammar. And with semantics, we did in the reading, there was, of course, talk about connotation and denotation. So, listeners, you are intelligent, so you probably know this, but just let's talk about it. So denotation comes when it comes to vocab specifically, so I'm going to be using it in a different context, but they are the direct definitions of the word that you would find in a dictionary. Okay. Connotation includes the emotional suggestions of a word. They are not literal. Normally, those emotional connections are very personal. So my emotional connection to, say, rape is not going to be the same emotional connection that another girlfriend of mine might have or a guy friend of mine might have. Okay, so we all bring something personal to it. So if I transfer these definitions to the scene at hand, and not vocab, okay, so I'm going to stretch it a bit. The denotation is that Bruce is using the language of violence to show love and have it be cathartic for both of them, but really more so for Cass, and really snap Cass out of this funk that she's been in. The connotation for me is the fact, or includes the fact, that we do know that there is role play like this where you're fighting and it turns into sex. We've seen it in other media incarnation. A man and a woman having a physical altercation with each other or getting in an argument goes into sex right away. We've seen this. Okay. Cass is wearing Barbara's Batgirl outfit, which the design has slightly changed because, I guess Cass is talented sewing. But we know that costume brings all the boys to the yard. We've seen that in the previous, what issue was that? I can't remember. That's just not my strong point. I never remember issue numbers unless they're like super duper important or emotionally connected to me. Donovan was on, if you recall. We know that this is true. Batgirl talks about, she felt very glamorous in it. Tim Drake ogles her. Okay, so we have that going in. Cass removes her mask right here, like mid pushing him down. I'm not sure necessarily why you would do that. Okay, she's leaning in for something. She is straddling him. Okay, in an attempt to kiss him. And again, there is that connection with what she was doing with David Kane, but the straddling there, David Kane was on his belly, and here we have Batman on his back. There's always the Batman-Batgirl romantic question from the outside. It depends on Barbara's origin story as to why she took on the cowl. We know that Bruce Timm, with some of the stuff that he had done with Barbara, that there was that question. Unfortunately, we saw something very similar to this played out in the Killing Joke animated film, did we not? Now, of course, I've never seen it, but I've seen some of those stills that there is, I think they're sparring, straddling, and then all of a sudden she initiates sex with him. So the connotation of all of this, I've given you all of this reasoning, is that this is a sexualized scene and it makes me really uncomfortable. Okay. Why is Cass taking her mask off throughout the fight multiple times? This is not the only time that she takes her mask off. Is it just for kissing purposes? And, she's older too. So it's not a child, it's a young adult. It just is like, it seems really skeevy to me. Batman, we're moving on. So that's just that sort of thing. The first thing that he says is, please, Cassandra, I don't want to fight you. Why does he leap to that right away when there are tons of steps in between what's happening? Go home. I told you not to do this. I don't want to fight you. There wasn't another way to reason. And then she's like super excited. It seems like she's smirking underneath there. You're lying. So it's like, well, you do want to fight and we're going to do it. There is significant damage to property and danger to civilians in this issue. I was astounded by this bridge scene. The fact that there is gas. There are people near the gas, on the gas, and Batman throws this pellet and explodes the bridge. You can't tell me that people are not dead on that bridge. And apparently this is necessary. Batman said that this was necessary. That's insane to me. How can you argue that Batman is a good person, character, father, hero when he decides to do this? Aye. We find out that the duo is on Soul. So, when that happened, I thought, maybe we can explain this. But Bruce knew all along. He knew that the Soul was probably going to happen. He knew they were going to be on it. He wasn't as affected. So really that it's like Soul didn't exist. He was going to do it no matter what. So no, I can't explain that or probably have any sort of empathy for what's going on. I just condemn this entire thing. I feel like Batman is a super jerk here, asking her to choose. Now, it's not between Kane and the Bat family, choose. Are you loyal to your father, your birth father, or us? No, are you loyal to David Kane, your father, Oracle, or me? Why is he giving her that choice right there? That seems really, really petty. I think you could have just eliminated David Kane because I think he knew that was not going to be the answer. Basically, he's saying, are you loyal to Oracle or me? Are you loyal to your mother or your surrogate mother or your surrogate father? What a jerk thing to do. Again, this is not overdramatic Stella. This is like legitimately, I feel like that was a really stupid and petty question to ask. But she chooses the Bat, which good for her. And it's not a surprise. And also, flips him the bird. I feel like, no, not you, this. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So why would you? I really don't understand. I don't understand Bruce in this. I don't understand why anyone would like Bruce in this. I just think it's a really bad issue. And then his explanation of why this whole thing happened is just, it's bonkers. It is bonkers. So she needed it. We both did. Because Baz is like, why on earth would you do that if like the effect was not, there wasn't an effect on you? Are you saying it was also kind of screw up therapy session? What other therapy would Cassandra understand? She grew up with no human contact apart from violence. Fighting is her language, Barbara, the core of her being, of her soul. She had things she needed to get off her chest, and so do I. And then, Barbara's like, you're crazy. I would have said, you're bleeping crazy. And so you say, but it works, and smiles, and then they swing off. So because they swing off, Cass must have been right there when he's explaining. I guess she doesn't feel manipulated at all, because I sure as heck would. But here's the big thing. Remember 49, I said, remember this of he wants you to heal from the trauma. Okay, so why would you lean in on someone's trauma in order to help them? How does that make sense? That's the only way they understand love and, the language. And so, I'm going to beat her up and she's going to understand that I care about her. I mean, I feel like, remember, I said I was going to make extreme examples, but, sexual assault for some people, if this is something that was happening in their family, even though it like feels wrong, they might also associate it with love because that might be the only thing that they are experiencing. Maybe the person is like very apart from them, but then when this is going on, then they feel like, well, this is not the best, but at least they're like choosing me. Would you lean in on that trauma and assault in order to speak her language? I don't think so. I think that this is really, really messed up. And I'm sure that people will defend this. I'll listen to you defend it if you want to write in, but I don't know that I will necessarily I'll entertain it, right? But I don't know that I'll ever change my mind on this. And this is just very connotative, I suppose. I don't know what I thought when I first read this years ago, but as I've matured and seen things and learned new things, I feel like this is really messed up. And I think that there are just underlying layers to this that seems really inappropriate as well. I did not like it. I wouldn't care for, Batman. I'd be like, why should I like Batman after this with the things that he's doing here? I just don't know that you can explain it. I think that even that scene, like, yes, Barbara is right. Like, it's messed up. It's not you're crazy. Like, that was really monstrous of you to do. You should not have done that. She is in your care as a child. That's not the way that you're going to do it. No other therapy would work. Oh my gosh. Is that what other people say when people are striking out on other stuff? Like, well, no other therapy will work. Might as well do something else. An alcoholic, AA is not working for them. Inpatient rehab's not working. Let's just like make them suffer and maybe drink several bottles of things so that they just hate the taste of alcohol. Is that what we're going to do? That's what it feels like is happening here. It's just terrible. The one thing I did like, because I'll end on a positive there, because I'm just raging against this. I don't think I've disliked an issue since over there. What was that, 97? Batgirl 97 with was that Hope Larson, or were we past that? Yeah, I think we're past that. But all of that stuff. The only thing I liked is this thing with Robin and basically almost pulling a Batman trick of like, da, 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 da. You're going to, I dropped this vial and it was tomato juice. And that is very psychosomatic. And Dr. Death's reaction to it, he's like, what does he say? I can feel my brain slipping already. Mindless rage is filling my, and they're like, oh my gosh, what's with this tomato juice? So that was like, I did enjoy that. I'm going to give this 1 out of 10. I'm not even going to say 1 out of 10 what's, because that's how serious I am about this. And I'm interested to see or hear any and all feedback about that. Again, yes, I read it and I know what that first part is supposed to say. If that first part was not in it, imagine what that cemetery scene would have been like out of context. Her straddling him, looking for a kiss, all of that stuff. Even the end part. So that is the only thing really keeping this issue from really like everyone, I think, having the same read. But in my defense, again, there's a lot of connotative connections, I guess, that I'm making that's coming into this. And I think that it's not unrealistic, the things that I am saying, to have that connotation. So obviously mine is going to be a different experience than other people. Okay, moving on. We've got listener emails.
Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. Mail's here. Here's the mail. It never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
So first, I'll start off with YouTube comments from the previous episode. So first of all, we have from Bagels After Midnight. It sounds like your friend Right Round, and he spelled it WRIGHT with a question mark. And Bagels After Midnight is Harry. He's got 3 different YouTube things. I think I already talked about this. He trolls me not once, but twice and 3 times sometimes. But anyways, it sounds like your friend Right Round had maybe pushed himself too much trying to prepare for a race after having taken 10 years off from physical activity. Indeed, this would have been the 10-year anniversary since the infamous 2012 Falmouth road race, where the conditions were so awful that many people he's spoken to have professed to never run again, but I can only speculate. And I think if I'm correct, that was that a 10K that he ran, I think, with his sister's question mark, if I remember it. And I think it was in August and it was really hot. So that's what he's talking about there. And then he quotes me and says, and this goes out to you, Professor Coca Jr., end quote, and perhaps any other Sugi fans in the audience, and has an angry little emoticon there because, of course, that's him. I will say, though, that he confessed to me that he wasn't much at the time of speaking on this. So whenever 4 weeks ago, he said he hadn't been much of a Sugi fan because he hadn't even listened to her album. And I said, that's really bad because I'm not a Sugi fan. And I listened to her album twice to give like it a fair shake. So interesting. Donovan Morgan Grant, probably former beloved, because he's not going to be happy if he listens to this, though I did tell him not to. I love you returning to your hypocrisy by saying that Oracle definitely shares the same misgivings about Huntress that Batman does. Yes, I'm always here to help when hypocrisy is happening. And then on part 2, I wrote in so that I could remember. And I said, Stella, our podcasting brother Tom Penneries brought up a good point. You forgot 3 hours and more because Maroney woke up and still heard them. So Tom, like out of context, I think, texted me 3 hours. I'm like, what are you talking about? And sent me an image of Nightwing. And I completely forgot about that when I was talking about them because remember, they knocked boots, Nightwing and Batgirl, when Maroney was tied up. And 3 hours is mentioned. Oh, because Maroney was conked out. And so that's when they decided to have sex. But Maroney woke up and still heard them. So that means their sexual activities were going for 3+ hours. And I completely forgot about that. But it's super funny that Tom Panarese picked up on that and I didn't. Bagels After Midnight returns and says, he's so disrespectful. You wouldn't have stunk at Mario Tennis if you'd simply learned that only the receive. Oh, sorry, I laughed. You didn't hear it. That only the receiving player may return the serve. So the context of that is we're doing doubles. And I guess I moved one of my characters and returned the serve. And it was the person closest to the net. And the game like stopped and had this warning message of only the receiving player may return the serve. And we were cracking up over that. And he took pictures. So there you go. And no bread. You must have forgotten the pumpkin bread. If you need to cross that off your pumpkin list, then there you have it. I did forget after I recorded because I said that I was refused bread and water, or the bread. So the true guest host relationship had yet to happen. But I did get some pumpkin bread, I think, second to last morning I was there. And then finally, as far as Peter Griffin goes, I must say Seth MacFarlane was nearly inescapable as a film student at an East Coast school in the early 2010s. People were talking about being extras on Ted 2, and my mother met someone involved in Family Guy at her place of work, and he reached out to me. The idea was that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were going to create Hollywood East at some point, and I guess nature abhors a vacuum. So there you go, about the relationship between Mama Shoot and Peter Griffin. She also said Celine Dion, she's related somehow, and there was somebody else that she mentioned. I don't know. She, very interesting person. I feel like she should be a guest on this particular podcast. I'd have to think of, besides interview questions, what she should come on and talk about. And then finally, I almost forgot, from my Earth 2 BFF, Shayna, and this is from Batgirl Oracle 226. BFF Stella, it is a fair question, and it got me thinking. One could argue that bad representation is better than no representation because it still brings about some awareness. Also, by entering a bad representation into the public eye, it can raise an opportunity for a more widespread conversation to happen. It can inspire better representations to come into being as a counterpoint/perspective or argument against the bad representation. A sort of dialogue can happen that allows for improvement and accountability. I suppose my perspective about queer romances is a little purist, preferring to have only good representations or nothing at all. I also admit I might be a tad sensitive on queer representation in media, since it seems to me that tokenism has been on the rise in recent years. I might have a different opinion if you ask me 5 to 10 years in the future. I know I definitely had a different opinion 10 years ago when there was much less representation. I really enjoy the Feeding the Game arc of Birds of Prey. I think there are some very interesting role reversals we see. The reveal of Helena being Black Canary and Dinah being the one giving her support back at the clock tower is all very fun. It also does a lot to highlight what Dinah and Babs each bring to the team and how they complement one another and how Helena might fit into the equation moving forward. And I've always loved seeing Dinah's response to Barbara firing her and starting to train more. One of the things that I think Simone does very well is depicting Dinah as someone who wants to improve and grow as a hero. It feels unbelievably refreshing to see a full-grown woman written the way Simone writes Dinah in her run. That being said, it never made any sense to me that Barbara's breakup with Dick would lead her to wanting to take Dinah out of the field, or that Helena sleeping with Dick to be the only reason for Barbara not to trust her. As progressive as I think Simone's run is, I can't get over how much Barbara's decisions seem to be solely informed by her prior relationship in this arc. If other reasons were given in addition to her relationship with Dick, I don't think I would mind as much. And I'm on board with that, Shayna. And we've known Cass and Steph don't care about their secret identities and Batgirls since issue number 1. And all the times we've seen them patrolling with their masks off. Remember when that used to be something that concerned Barbara? Yeah, sure do. I also remember when Batman was upset about it as well. I wish it become a real plot point so there could at least be a reason for why Cass and Steph always seem to be so casual about their secret identities. Batgirls is starting to lose. Batgirls is starting to lose me, unfortunately. And just when it seems like some restraint is being shown in using the narration boxes. P.S. Do you have any interest in the Gotham Knights game that was just released? I'm not going to lie, it's pretty satisfying to be able to play a full-length game as Batgirl, even if there are some iffy things with the portrayal of her disability in the game, Shayna. Yes. So first of all, Shayna, all I have to say is you're lucky that you have a PS5. I do not have a PS5. And that is one of the games that I really want to play and am disappointed that I don't have a PS5 because for the most part, I can go around it and there are still enough PS4 games that I can play and some new games that are coming out like God of War Ragnarok came out on PS4, so that's good. Resident Evil 4 remake is coming out on PS4, so I'm super excited about that. I'm going to reach some problems, I think, most likely with whatever the next Naughty Dog game is, and also with the next Spider-Man game is where I'm going to have issues. And one of the two is probably going to make me, but I don't have $1,000 to burn right now as someone who is in a minimum wage job and also in grad school. So at some point, I think I'll get it, but I am interested. I know it's not gotten the best reviews. Like everything was really hyped up and then reviews came out and were very middling, but I still want to play it. I think playing as Barbara is going to be super awesome. And it looks like the co-op is still, I think, fun, even though people aren't giving it the best of reviews. And I guess the story is you see everything coming, but I often disagree with views. I always try to make up my own reviews. I always try to make up my own mind. So I am most likely, yes. After I get my PS5, I will play that. But that's super awesome that you get to play it. And yeah, I can't wait. Thank you everyone for writing in. And yeah, remember you can always comment on those videos if you are watching them. And you can always write in also at batgirltheoracle@gmail.com. And there's a lot that you can comment on in this first part for sure. Okay, well, I'm going to take a break. When I come back, I'm going to do some modern quickies, including, of course, Nightwing, and a full review of Batgirl's number 12. And now, Zaius' Radio Hour, for probably the last time, dedicated to Professor Coca Jr., because she did recommend this particular group. So it is going to feature Run Devil Run by Girls' Generation. See you soon. back to the second part. Okay, so some modern quickies here. Batman 129. Failsafe has countered every move Batman and the Justice League have attempted. Is the Dark Knight out of options on Earth? I feel like that's basically all I have to say. I did have a question. The only reason I'm mentioning this issue, because Oracle is in it, is in the previous issue, we saw at the very end Oracle being hooked up, and I thought, oh, is she helping out? Was she taken, captured? So Oracle is hooked up to a surveillance system, and she is a hostage to Failsafe. And Dick and I think Stephanie, at the very least, are also captured hanging upside down in a costume case, it looks like. I still have a question as to how Barbara got captured and hooked up and all of that, and how it's like connecting to her. So I guess it is the chip and maybe the evil orc. I don't know. So I still have questions, but at least that particular question was answered. Batman Urban Legends 21. We see, I mean, there are other stories, but we see Renee Montoya's last days as a detective before she became Gotham City's newest commissioner. And the only reason why I bring this up is that Kate, aka Batwoman, and Renee have a friendly chat on a roof. It seems like it's not been, when would this have happened? I don't think that they were dating at this point in time. It does seem like they're friends. And the way it starts off is, how long were you there when Kate calls to her? And I was just associating with like current times and like how awkward it is that her, former girlfriends are both commissioners. I don't know necessarily where we're going to go with either of this. I don't even know when the last time is we saw Kate and Renee together. I remember, and this was probably the first time I encountered a lesbian in comics, was, is it 52, the weekly series? And I was like, what is this? What's going on? Which now it's like, oh, yay, lesbians. But before I was just like, this is interesting. I don't know what this is, because it was so long ago. And I remember when we started over with the new 52, that Montoya was like missing or something. She was like on the wall, and Kate, it was understood that Kate had a relationship with her in the Batwoman title, but we didn't really know. So I don't know what that history is now, if Rebirth goes back to 52, the weekly series, and where's it going forward. I don't know what Kate is even doing. That's one of the blind spots, I think, with the comics and because I'm just not reading it. So I'm not sure, but both of her girlfriends are in a position of power. So that's exciting. But we're going to look at this Nightwing 98. Look, you can see a butt right there. Nightwing meets Nightmite and Bitewing and Oracle and Danielle D. Nicolo. What? That's right. That meddling Nightmite booped himself in the fifth dimension, and after reading 7 secrets, he hitchhiked his way over with D. Nicolo, into our Nightwing series. Trust us, you're not going to want to miss this one. So that is, in fact, remember that Richard, is that his name? Rick Grayson? That's actually who it is. It is Nightwing. But this is, it's a super fun issue, which I think you should be used to if you've got any sort of fifth dimension imp coming through here. But I will say, Tom Taylor, how could you? Nightmite says, I ship him with Starfire, but whatever makes him happy, I guess. And Barbara's, excuse me, which if there was ever a time to use icicle word bubbles, that would have been the time. And then she's just super upset. Speaking of which, you two have had this will they, won't they thing going on. And while you've clearly finally settled on yes, they will, I think this whole thing could use some progression. And then all of a sudden, look at this wedding. A wedding is about to happen. We've got a bunch of people invited. They're concerned. There's Starfire. She just seems more flummoxed as to why she's there rather than upset. But look at all those people. I don't know why Huntress is over there, but there you go. And they don't get married. There is this one part where Dick does say not yet. And then Bez's like, not yet. And then Bruce here is pretty funny. Nightmite says, why? What's wrong with happiness and commitment? You don't have to be like this guy, all self-denial all the time, denying self-love, happiness, carbs, looking back at Batman. And then Batman says, you've developed an imp, as if it's a disease. Like, oh, you've got this. And then Batman leaves. he doesn't have time for this. You also have Bitewing as the ring bearer, which seems appropriate. And Bitewing also later on helps out with the mission. Da, 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 and speaks like Cass used to speak, but she's very fluent now. So there you go. There is this really funny because Nightmite is Dick's number one fan with, and also that girl is Olivia, but has this t-shirt, I guess, for the fan club. And it is the reversal of that one panel that we see all the time. And it is Nightwing slapping Batman, which he deserves it, especially after Batgirl number 50. And at the very end, because, the devil, what's his name? Neuron? I haven't heard that name since I did that Fear Unleashed. What was that called? That with Shag that I had on and people doing their wishes and all of that. So yeah, Neuron, that's crazy that I've just not heard that for so long. And the final thing I want to say about this is just about, and also Raven pops up and is like, what's going on here? You have an imp? And Nightwing's like, don't start. I like this that Nightwing says about fandom, basically, fans and their idols. Nightwing wants to know what Nightmite's real name is. And Nightwing says, in response to the question of why do you need to know? Because I shouldn't be your whole identity. If you have impossible expectations of me, then at some point I'm not going to meet them. It's okay to be a fan, but you shouldn't put me or anyone on that big a pedestal. So I love that. I think that's a lesson that we can all learn. It's certainly, where that Christian idea of have no idols comes from. But I have learned, painfully, what happens when someone that you admire and you have put up on a pedestal, whether you knew that you did or not, disappoints you. And it's heartbreaking. And so I really try to disassociate myself from, I will have a love of something or someone, but I really do need to separate myself or else it gets really bad. And Barbara Gordon / Batgirl, really Barbara Gordon is a prime example that I think probably for years she had been on a pedestal, and then the stories and the writing got really bad, and that was really hard for me. And so being able to kind of step away, I think is pretty healthy. But we also see just with celebrities and things, they're humans as well. One of my friends like to say they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us. So yeah, they're no different and they're going to make mistakes. And I think if you're so connected and then all of a sudden they do something or say something, then it's super sad. I think this is something that always will get to me for some reason. But if there are people that I really like and I find out that they're mean to their fans or mean in person, and the persona that they've crafted is if it's nice, it's actually not true. That's the most disappointing for me. In particular, when I go to see Broadway shows, and I haven't been able to do this for a couple of years, of course, because of COVID, but I love stage dooring it and just, being able to say like, great job and things like that. And some people are great, but there have been like some really cold personalities that, and that's where empathy comes in, because maybe something happened during the show or they're not having a good day, and so we need to try to be understanding there. But some people are just not kind, and that's like really disappointing. You're like just deflated, like I wish I had it known almost. So I will say my favorite Broadway actress is Kelly O'Hara, and she is very kind. I've only feel like maybe twice I've stage door and she's been there. I've been disappointed a couple times that they've not come out, but it's often because I do matinees and sometimes they just don't come out matinees. And so that's, the better thing about doing nights. But yeah, she is very kind and seems like a loving individual. I very much, not putting her up on a pedestal, but yeah, she's my favorite for a reason. So there you go. A lesson from Nightwing. There's also a lesson in Batgirl's number 12, which we will get to as well. Okay, Batgirl's number 12, Batgirl Summer Conclusion. Story Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, art Neil Googe, colors Rico Renzi. Picking up where we left off in issue 11, Steph and Cass fight Riddler, but through riddles, he reveals that he is not the killer they are looking for. A half-dead killer moth KOs Riddler and asks the Batgirls for help because he's severely injured. The Batgirls are split as to what to do since there's Riddler, an injured Killer Moth, and a soon-to-be-dead Grace O'Halloran. Cass thinks it's a good idea to split up by flying Killer Moth's jetpack while holding Killer Moth and going to Grace's location. This leaves Steph with Riddler, who, through more riddles, implies her father is still alive. They fight. 505 kind of helps, but somehow the trio defenestrate and land in water, messing with Fido's circuits and allowing the Riddler to escape. Meanwhile, Oracle directs a badly flying Cass, and also one who doesn't care or doesn't seem to care if Killer Moth lives or dies. I mean, she literally flies through a billboard to Grace. So she's directed to Grace and also calls her cop buddy, Officer Brooks, and tells him what's up and where to be. After recording for the night, Grace, one martini in, is leaving when she's attacked and slashed in the face, maybe losing an eye like poor Aemon Targaryen, by Mr. Fun. He's been cleaning up the streets of people who are trash and not helping Gotham. And Grace is next. She offers to interview him, which is either a delaying tactic or, given the fact that it is Grace and we know her being like this, could be the truth. And Officer Brooks arrives. Grace will most likely be collateral damage, however, but Cass arrives just in the nick of time. And again, with no concern for Killer Moth, she drops Killer Moth from a height and then dive bombs onto Mr. Fun. There is then a pretty cool fighting sequence. It's cool, but it probably shouldn't exist, honestly, between Cass and Mr. Fun, where she has to use strategy and her dark, traumatic past to defeat him. I guess he must be a good fighter if he's able to hold his own against Cassandra Cain, the probably top 5 fighters in the DC universe. Grace is safe. Cass gives the podcast 5 stars, and Brooks makes the caller. At a press conference the next day, Montoya says the department needs to do better, and leaking the info was the department idea. Grace is in the hospital and maybe getting sober, / applause. Babs is having a bad leg day, but fixes up Fido while talking with Alicia, which she seems to be popping up over again. Again, I think it's probably because of the movie, so maybe next month or the month after we won't see Alicia anymore because the movie's kaput. And Dick comes over to visit. Steph and Cass commune on the roof, Steph beating herself up again over letting Riddler go, and she mentions her father. Elsewhere, Jervis Tetch, a.k.a. Mad Hatter, is getting some therapy and is planning a reunion between Steph and her dad, and then bludgeons the therapist when he doesn't like the suggestions. And next, see you in the annual. Okay, this is, as the warning for this particular episode, there are a few times, I don't do it very often because I think that it is probably annoying because I should be giving comments, not asking questions, but I am going to ask why a lot just because I am legitimately confused as to why these things are happening. Maybe I'll offer my thoughts, maybe not, but it's basically because I'm asking why, it's not a good thing. So I am going to do that in this particular episode. Also, the file that I have for this is not the best, so you won't be able to see very well, but at least you can see. So cover wise, we have Riddler. His stick is, I wonder what that stick is called. I'm thinking of the caduceus, I believe it is pronounced, that Mercury has, but I don't know that we could necessarily call that. We have maybe Killer Moth and his bloody hands reaching out. Maybe, I don't know. And then Cass and Steph are on the actual riddle point. And is there anything else I can see? I can't tell what the background is necessarily. I guess it's Killer Moth. Does he have yellow gauntlets like that? Yeah, it's him. Okay. So, and then he says, riddle me this, Batgirls, which one of you's gonna die? Does he talk like that? Does he talk like a gangster? Which one of you's gonna die? I don't think so. Anywho, okay. Okay. First question. What was the point of the Riddler? Was he just a red herring? Was that his point? But why is he, if it's true, so we all thought, I thought, that, I'll speak for myself, that the Riddler was in fact the Ripper. But actually he was just giving these riddles to help. But it's so bizarre that this guy was going to crime scenes and plucking body parts out or whatever and replacing them with some sort of cipher code in there. I don't know what the point is. Why would he be helping? That doesn't seem like the riddles work, but the reason for the riddles doesn't work. What? He's like, I'm going to help you catch the actual killer. But here it's like he's still going to try to destroy them. So I don't honestly understand why the Riddler is here. I also don't understand why Steph and Cass are splitting up in this way. And even before that, because Killer Moth helps him out, Killer Moth says, need your help. I'm wounded, need your help. And Steph says, and why should we trust you? And I'm confused why there's that connection. He needs help. Why would we trust you? He's not asking you to trust him. He's not saying I could help you. He's saying on the precipice of death. Could you please help me? So that's a very strange connection there. Cass and Steph deciding to split up, like it probably needs to happen, right? However, I don't know why this is the way we split up. So Cass takes Killer Moth, and I think that's fine because people thought that he was dead. So he's really in a bad way. But Cass should immediately take him to the hospital. And instead, she takes him everywhere. She goes through this. She flies erratically. She's not very good at this. She goes through this billboard. Let's see here. She drops him from a height. Like, this guy should be dead 3 times already. And then leaving Riddler with Steph, I feel like because Steph is clearly incompetent in this particular run, I'm not saying that Stephanie Brown is incompetent. I'm saying that that's how we're reading her here. And we're meant to apparently read her in this comic, that we should not have left Steph with Riddler. I guess we needed to do it so the purpose of this is because of the father revelation. And honestly, the father revelation, number one, really makes it seem like this is a Stephanie Brown book. And number two, with that weird Mad Hatter stuff, it stinks. It stinks of an editorial mandate that something's about to happen. I guess we're bringing Clue Master back. I guess that's the big purpose. I don't know. But all of this is forced. How I would have suggested is that Cass should have stayed with Riddler. Steph should have, perhaps without the backpack, because shouldn't they have their motorcycles, taken Killer Moth to the hospital, and then the girls should have reconvened together with Grace. Cass could have, I don't know, called for backup or had Riddler taken in somehow. That's what should have happened, I think. With the Steph situation, I have no idea. So they're fighting. Steph is holding her own and everything. Why on earth is there any need or way that they go through this window here? Is the window open? ? I don't think it should be, given architecturally how that is, because that's a sliding glass door. There should have been a balcony there. So that's a big question mark. But she's leaping parallel to the window. Perpendicular would have happened. But it's like, it just makes her seem very incompetent. Like, how did she manage to do all this? I don't know. It's all very forced, I think. It doesn't make sense that a sliding glass door wouldn't have a balcony, because that's dangerous, since you're up on a height and apparently over water. And we just have to force Stephanie and the Riddler to be separated. So, it's just like, it doesn't make as much sense to me. It's all very orchestrated to get to a particular point. I was surprised to see that Officer Brooks has one leg. So I wonder if he popped up again here. So I think I might be correct that he's going to be a minor cast character. And so I'll be interested to hear more about him. Mr. Fun. So first of all, I will say that this T-handle push dagger, it seems so familiar. I was like, who else uses that? Didn't I just read something with this? And then I'm looking up his backstory and looked up his appearances, and he is in the Batman Family miniseries that I covered recently. And yes, he does have that push dagger. And so I thought, oh my gosh, here he is again. I will say, just like the Riddler being used as a red herring and helping out in the case, kind of, that this seems very random as well. We're only now connecting the victims with they weren't adding to society, basically. And, I mean, we know he's unhinged, but honestly, where is this coming from? I like what the fight looks like between Cass and Steph, but I disagree that the fight should have even taken place, that she should have had this much difficulty. And I mean, we see the strategy and everything, and apparently, what does it say? Her current adversary is different. He has so little emotion. And this is the purple box, of course, explaining it's like fighting an alien. It's unnerving and unlocks a door inside of her. It leads to a place she rarely goes, a time defined by pain. Old wounds reopen as the stitches come out, and she relives the bitter lessons of her upbringing. Only when it's over does she close the door. So the fight takes so much, I shouldn't say so much, out of her. The fight is so difficult that she has to go back and think about her upbringing and the tips and tricks that David Kane has given her. It's very interesting. I disagree. I think I recall him being a skilled fighter, but I don't know about this. And I was going to look up Batman Family to see my notes on it, because I remember each of those issues focuses on a particular member of the Bat family, and then there's a fight, but I can't remember which person fights against Mr. Fun. So I do apologize about that. I did like Cass's parting comment to Grace that I gave your podcast 5 stars. And I hope that in the future that Grace doesn't drink as much. I guess it takes a psycho to help you change your ways. Hashtag Batman and Batgirl number 50. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I don't know that she'll have an eye. I feel like she's lost her eye there, but I'm interested to see where that goes. The ending, Steph is down on herself again, and Cass is offering comfort and affirmation, and Barbara's not there. So this is a trope at this point that Steph messes up. Steph doesn't think she's worthy to be on the team. Cass is there to give her positive affirmation, but Barbara doesn't because she's either not privy to the conversation or whatnot. I don't know what's happening there. The mentor should be there. It does build this or build upon and augment this relationship between the two girls. But, if someone is a mentor and Alicia even saying they've learned a lot from you, I don't know why she is not a part of this particular conversation. And the purple boxes, I would say they're not annoying at all in this issue. And, they give insight into what Cass is doing while fighting Mr. Fun. But they also have this insightful moment on the roof. It says the Batgirls aren't perfect. They're flawed, wounded, just like you and me. But friendship doesn't need perfection. It demands our vulnerability, dares us to expose our weaknesses. We can show each other our scars, and even though they don't disappear completely, friendship makes them hurt less. Together, we can start to heal. I love that. I think that is great. That's insightful. It's intelligent. However, why do we need it from a disembodied voice and not from one of the girls? Like, that would have been, we know that Cass speaks well in this book and intelligently and says things we would never expect her to say. Why not come from one of the girls? I feel like that would have been more powerful and making it more personalized about friendship and things like that. And especially given what Steph is going through. So yeah, that's a nice ending. I would have liked it to end this way. The ending just seems really weird. And like I said, it just seems like something's being forced upon us that we'll find out soon. So that's it for me on Batgirls number 12. I'm going to give it a lower grade just because, again, why? It just was very confusing. It seems like it's all choreographed for a particular thing that we need Cluemaster to be mentioned. We need Riddler to get away because the Batgirls aren't going to be the ones to pick him up. We need the Ripper to be caught, and then the in between. But just like the Ripper, I don't know. All of these is just like I feel like we weren't led to believe any of the things that happen, so that it makes it very weak. In my opinion, or I should just say weak. We don't need that very modifier. So I'm going to give it 6.5 out of 10 cup nudes. Okay, my anime watch list. I recently watched, as I mentioned in the beginning, Romantic Killer 2022. just came out, 12 episodes. And it is on Netflix. You can find it there. Anzu Hoshino needs only 3 things in her life: video games, chocolate, and her beloved cat. Unlike other high school girls, Anzu has no time for or interest in romance. But as she begins playing a poorly programmed 3D otome game, a bizarre flying wizard named Riri emerges from the screen and calls Anzu Subject 1, the first person who will experience a dating game harem storyline in real life. Because you find out later that it's to help with the population of Japan. It's in fine print, which she doesn't read, but it comes back to that. And even though Anzu likes dating sims, she doesn't want it in real life. So it's very interesting. Despite Anzu's fiery protests, Riri confiscates her favorite things to force her to focus on love. They orchestrate a series of unlucky incidents. They is Riri, so they do use the third person pronoun. They orchestrate a series of unlucky incidents and romantic cliches that lead her to meet Tsukasa Kazuki, the most attractive boy in her school. Still enraged, Anzu is adamant about resisting Tsukasa's charm, as all the ridiculous fabricated scenarios help Anzu warm up to Tsukasa's pleasant nature. Riri throws other probably stereotypically pretty boys her way, because adverbs modify adjectives, and avoiding romance quickly becomes almost impossible. By the end of this season, because dear Lord, please let there be more, she has four people coming after her, and some of them do seem like, where did you come from? Like, it's forced upon her. And these people almost seem like brainwashed. And so there's this idea of consent that comes along with it. And then you realize, oh, there's something else going on. But this is the best anime, which I haven't watched many this year, but definitely hands down best one I've seen this year. It's probably top 5 favorite anime that I have seen. And sometimes with anime, it takes maybe 1 to 3 episodes to get into it and give something a fair shake. But by like the first episode, by the end of it, probably midway, I was loving this thing. And she tries to, because, some of the guys all of them are cute, but some I find more attractive than others. And if something like cute happens, she will turn into like this man face and like, no. Instead of like a pretty girl, she just tries to fight against everything and fight against this wizard. It is amazing. I love Anzu. And it also gets into some deep things. I don't want to spoil too much because I really think that you should give this a fair shake, but objectification is a really big thing. And that's something that Tsukasa deals with and makes him anxious. And something that I thought about, really in real life, especially, I feel like it's something that Henry Cavill deals with and just people objectifying him, women screaming for men to take off their shirts if they're like at Comic-Con or something like that and see their muscles. And I think they are uncomfortable. And, part of me is like, my gosh, women go through this all the time. So cannot 1 or 2 men experience this? But also, thinking that they are human beings and we need to treat them as such rather than a piece of meat. Consent is a big issue in here. And stalkers is also something big, and just that people have things going on in their lives. So it's one of those, it seems like very fantastical with what's going on and hilarious. Anzu is amazing. I love her. But then it like shocks you and takes turns of like, oh my gosh, this sort of thing is going on. So, which I love those anime that, if it's slice of life, just like in real life, not everything is happy and there aren't many stakes to it, but in real life, there are stakes and there is depth to things. So this really shows that. So highly, highly, highly recommend Romantic Killer. And I really hope that more seasons come out. It did say like to be continued ... question mark at the very end. So here is hoping. And then my final segment, of course, is literature recommendations. And because I never learned from last time, I think Pachinko was the last thing that I talked about. I feel like I was just on the cusp of, no, maybe not. The Woman Who Died a Lot. Well, I read Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, and I know people feel like it. I mean, they just did the TV series, I think, on Apple Plus. It was okay. I know that many people I know that Professor Coca really liked it. I think it's well written. I recognize that it is good, but I didn't care for it as much. And I think it was one of those kind of going against the popular grain, mainly because anything sad that could happen to this family did happen to the family. It was interesting to see, you know, all the generations. I feel like this is something that happens to me in that if I read something that's similar to something else or experience something or watch or play, then the second thing suffers. And I feel like I already read this, but in a different culture with 100 Years of Solitude, because that goes through generations. But it was really interesting to learn more about Korean history, Japanese history, and then the really bad relationship between the Japanese and Korean, which is something that is like, I don't understand. I don't understand why there's so much hate towards the Koreans and that they're unclean. Like, where's that coming from? I then read 2 plays by August Wilson, The Piano Lesson, which is currently on Broadway, and Fences. And I do want to watch that film because I remember that's pretty recent with Denzel Washington and Viola Davis. And those were good, though not necessarily uplifting. The Sign in Sydney Brustein's Window by Lorraine Hansberry, which is something that I didn't know existed. Like Lorraine Hansberry, all I think about is Raisin in the Sun. So that was also, it had, I guess, like it kind of ended on an up, but there's a lot of down, down, down in that as well. Season of Love by Helena Greer. And I know that because that was Tom's pick, which goes against, I think, character for the next required reading. And Tom has known the author for years. And so she actually comes on the show and we chat about the book and interview her as well. So certainly give that a listen. We had a lot of fun. And then just finished The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. And I found that really fun as well as heartwarming and deep. The main character goes through a great character shift. There's shipping and man-to-man shipping, which I don't often read. And yeah, so I think all good recommendations. There you go. Okay. You can send any questions or comments to batgirl@gmail.com. The rape scene of Nightwing, your thoughts on it, maybe your thoughts at the time, or if you remember what it was like at the time, why it was so controversial. That's a question. Batgirl number 50. What do you think about all of that? And how can you defend Batman in that? That's what I have to say. Like the show on Facebook or follow it on Twitter @Batgirl the Oracle. Who knows how long that's going to last since Twitter seems to be going. Subscribe to the show on YouTube for an uncut version. Follow the Batman Universe on Facebook and Twitter as well, and support the Batman Universe by subscribing to Patreon. Once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. And because you listen to this, and I think you might be a fan of mine, if you're a fan of me, you should be a fan of Pumpkin. So I hope you indulge in the pumpkin pie, even if you're not celebrating Thanksgiving. But have a safe holiday, whatever that holiday or time might be. And until next time, fly on, Babs lovers.
Just plain Barbara Gordon, masquerading for a lark as she rides into the night on her special Batgirl cycle. Who knows? Is the dynamic duo destined to become the triumphant trio? Only time will tell us more about this dazzling daredoll.
I love a happy ending, don't you?